Alright, this is a subscriber request video. I've been asked to show everybody how to time the distributor to the oil pump. If you're doing an oil pump replacement, or say you're replacing the distributor itself, how do you get this thing back into time? Now, I'm going to use this 93 KA E engine that I have just sitting around. It's a spare. So if you're just replacing the distributor and you're not pulling the oil pump or the drive shaft, which is this guy right here, the drive shaft is inside the engine like this, starting here at the bottom of the distributor and going down to the top of the oil pump. The crankshaft drives this gear, which drives both. So, and you got to make sure that these are timed correctly, because otherwise you will find that the distributor will be advanced or retarded by a certain number of degrees if this is off by a tooth. Now, if you're not pulling the oil pump, this will be a very easy process. All you got to do is set the engine to top dead center by spinning the 27 millimeter, and maybe a 27, 27 or it's a 30. It's one or the other. You're going to spin this until the timing ticks that are on the groove of this pulley here line up with this marker. You're also to know that you are on top dead center on the first cylinder. The rotor needs to point to the #1 spark plug lug on the distributor. I find that it's going to be at 4 o'clock. Now, this engine doesn't have an oil pump in it, so this can spin freely. There's nothing holding it. But for visual purposes, I'm going to set this at 4 o'clock and show you that when you're looking at it from the top, like that, 4 o'clock is where this rotor should be when you have it set at top dead center on the compression stroke of the first cylinder. So that's there. Now you can just unbolt the 12 millimeter bolts, or they might be 14s. I think they're 12 or 14s, and the distributor comes out. Just make sure that the rotor's pointing in the right place when you put the distributor back on, bolt it down, done. You don't have to worry about anything there. That's a distributor replacement. Boom, boom. If you're doing the oil pump, it's a completely different story. You still want to set the engine to top dead center on the compression stroke of the #1 cylinder, but once you pull the oil pump out, the oil pump is down here on the bottom side of the engine. It's held on by 4 12 millimeter bolts of different lengths, so make sure you don't screw up the lengths, because one's longer than the others, or 2 are actually longer and 2 are shorter. So don't screw them up, because they won't, you just don't want to run into that problem. Once you pull the oil pump out, though, you're going to have this. This is going to be able to spin any which direction. And if you disturb the timing of the crank and the cam at any point while this is out, you're going to have to set everything. You're going to have to spin it back around again, set it to top dead center. You got to spin it twice to get it to top dead center on the first cylinder, and then you're going to set the rotor back to this point. Now, the real pain in the ass part comes when you're trying to feed the oil pump back in, because when you pull the oil pump out, this spindle shaft is going to come out with it, and that's going to be a pain in the ass to get. You'll see that there's a half moon slot here on the end. This end here, the skinny end, is what engages the distributor. So once you have the distributor set where you want it, you've got to be able to feed this back in and have it engage the distributor properly. Now, since the distributor can turn, if you're even slightly off, like say you're off like 6 degrees here, or 10 degrees or whatever, and you go to put this in, it will engage. And then you'll put it all back together, and then you'll notice it runs like poo, because it's at full advance, or it's, or even if you do try and advance it, it still runs like poo. That's because it'll still run, because the blade on the rotor is that width. It may not run at all, but it may run. It'll just run like crap. So if it runs like crap after doing an oil pump replacement, you're off by a tooth. So you got to back it all back again, set this to the 4 o'clock position, You don't have to turn the engine at all. You just got to back the oil pump back out, turn the spindle, feed it back up in there, and hope that it engages this distributor properly, and you'll know because the oil pump will seat. Now I shine a light up in here. If I pull this rag out, you'll see that there's a hole. This rag is actually keeping oil in, but there's a hole here, and that up in there is where everything gets fed. If you shine a light up in there, you can see the bottom of the distributor, and you'll see where the half moon slot is on the bottom of the distributor. I can pull the distributor off of this and show you, but just for verbal purposes, you'll figure it out once you shine a light up in there, and you'll see that it's it's going to be oriented in a certain way. You got to make sure you match the orientation of this and the oil pump, so everything slides up into this rotor here, and it's in the proper timing. It sounds cumbersome, and it will take you a few tries probably, but you'll know if it engages the rotor up here and you bolt it down, and then you get up here and the rotor's like here, then you know that you have to take it back out and start again, because the rotor really should be here at 4 o'clock. And you can take a piece of chalk, or you can use a Sharpie marker, or you can use a paint pen. Once you have this set at top dead center on the compression stroke for cylinder 1, just mark it. Mark the rotor, and then mark the base of the distributor. Then you'll know that as long as this rotor is pointing at that point, then you're in the right spot. So you can always just hand grab it and put it there. Now I tried a little trick, and I got the idea from Tony, who's on the infamous Nissan website. His name is A Hardbody. He's very helpful in getting these information out on these trucks. He had an idea on how to keep the rotor from spinning if you're doing this as a one-man band, which a lot of times you guys are. I used to use my girlfriend to hold the rotor while I was underneath the truck feeding the oil pump in. So she would just put her hand on here and just keep it. And as long as it's in the right general vicinity, once I got the oil pump in, you could wiggle just a little bit if you just need to get that little turn, just to get that key to go up and in. Well, the last time I did the oil pump on this, she wasn't around, so I wanted to get it done. I didn't want to wait till I got home from work and she was home. So I went out, and like Tony, hang on, I have to get these apart to show you how we did this. Oh shit! All right, I used 2 magnets, and it's very convenient that that this rotor actually has these wings on it right here and right here. So once you get it in position, what I did is I took a magnet, I put a magnet there, and then I put a magnet here. So this particular one is kind of a pain in the dick, but once you get it in the right position the magnets and get it in a way where it doesn't want to turn. So you lock it in position using magnets, and mainly it'll try and turn so it goes down, because just the weight of the rotor right there. But just screw around with these magnets a little bit, and you can get it so it doesn't want to turn either direction. Then you can feed the oil pump in, and when I did it, it fell right in. So that's a little friendly advice tip there to help out with that. The other thing is that this end of the spindle is keyed, and it only will go in one way in the pump. Now there's a mark here, and there's a mark on there. You can get that like that. Let me see, this mark is right here on the spindle, and there's a mark here. I don't really use that because you're going to end up turning it little bits anyways to get it to line up with the distributor. It's a good way to know how to get this to go in here so it'll sit properly. That's how it's supposed to look. And what you're going to do is, and I can't do it here because this rag, I don't want to pull a rag and have oil all go out, but this will go up and into that hole, make sure all the bolt holes line up ahead of time on the oil pump, and then you'll feel it engage the rotor, and then you can kind of, it'll just pop right up and in. Feed the bolts in and lock it down, but you need a gasket too. I'll show you the gasket here. Alright, besides the oil pump and the spindle and getting all that set, you're going to want to buy Nissan part number 15066-21001. These are so cheap that you might as well buy a package of 10, because I'll tell you what, you're going to screw up at least 3 of these. Because you're going to get the oil pump in there, and then you're going to look at the rotor, and you're going to say, ah, shit, the pump's got to come back out. And since the pump is primed, you're going to have oil coming out of it while you're fumbling with it, and the gasket's going to get all wet, and then you're just going to get all crappy, and you're going to end up throwing the gasket out. So I think I paid $3, maybe $4 for 10 of these. Get them. They're the oil pump gasket. That's your part number, and yeah, then you'll have plenty left over, and that's good because you may have to do this again in the future. Alright, I'm just going to do a quick breeze through on doing this oil pump install. I'm just going to slap it in there just so you guys can see it in action. I've also had questions about shimming the oil pump and the Nismo oil pump springs. These are the Nismo oil pump springs. They go on and off a back order. I don't even know if Nismo's carrying them anymore. I would steer clear of using these, especially for just a daily driver. I mean, these things really send the oil pressure right up through the roof. I was seeing, with both springs in, I was seeing 80 pounds plus at idle. Just crazy. You don't need that. You can shim them. There are washers that you can use that go in the pump. Basically, you're going to undo this bolt here. There will be some springs in there already, or a spring in there when you pop this out, and then there will be the control valve. The control valve sits inside here. So you just lift this out, or unscrew this. It's a 27 millimeter bolt. Take it out. Take the springs out. You can use one or both. They're designed to be an inner and outer. I tried every combination just to see what the results were. There's an article on Infamous Nissan about how these springs cause the oil pressure to react, and that's all based on a whole day's worth of experimentation. I will tell you that in this particular instance, on mine, this pump is newer than the pump that I have on the green truck. This pump failed, and this pump was shimmed for a long time. I'm not sure if the shimming was what caused the pump to fail, or if it was just a bad pump after a while. But if you put this pump into the green truck, you get really low oil pressure, and you get a lot of noise, valve train noise. Even with the new rockers that I just put in the thing, you're still getting a lot of noise. So I say shim lightly. Be very careful about it, because it could shorten the life of something else. Plus, for a street truck, just driving back and forth to work, not really necessary. I wouldn't even say it was necessary for the autocross truck, but I did it because I read somewhere that it was cool, and there it is. So this pump is junk. I'm just using it for educational purposes, just so you guys can see what I'm doing. I'm going to show you guys exactly the process of getting it to go in there. I'm really going to do a half-ass version of this because I'm not going to really worry about getting the timing just right, and I'm definitely not going to waste a gasket putting it in there. I'm just going to show you what it looks like to put it in. So if you are replacing the pump, you're going to want to prime the pump, and the best way to do that is to pour oil into one of these holes and then move the drive gear back and forth. Move it one way entirely until you stop seeing air bubbles come out of the other port. So feed the oil in, and then you'll see the oil come out of this port, and just keep doing it till it's about a steady flow of oil. Then wipe it up, and then get your gasket ready. So get your gasket sitting on there. So then it's a matter of just looking up the hole here with a flashlight and seeing what direction the half moon is facing, and then making sure that the bolt holes that you got line up. So what's going to happen is, and I'll get the camera in here so you can see what I'm doing. Sorry about the noise. So you got your rotor up here pointing at top dead center on cylinder 1. You start by feeding the pump into the hole here, get the gear to go in, and then once you got it right, which I am nowhere even close, that's how it should be. It'll pop in just like that. But the problem is that I was 180 degrees off on where the spindle was. So it's facing that way. I'm going to turn it 180 degrees, so now it's facing the other way. I'm going to reset the rotor back to top dead center. I'm going to feed it in. Getting it started is tough because it's got a ring that it's got to go through initially. Then the gear goes through. Then there you go. And actually, that's at top dead center. So it'll sit just like that. Then you just feed your bolts in. And I'm actually going to stick some bolts in this thing because that's timed, and it'll keep the engine from leaking. So let me grab a bolt. There are short and long bolts, so make sure if you got a short bolt that you're putting it in the short bolt hole. So now that is in position there. That's how you do it. Simple process, just a pain in the ass if you're just a one-person job. So I suggest put magnets. If you got a second person, just have that person hold on to the rotor up here. Once it's in position, just have them hold it in position. Once you get the pump in, lined up, you can just wiggle the rotor just a hair. You don't even have to wiggle it far. Once you wiggle it, that half moon will fit right up in there and you're done. So that's it. That is installing your oil pump. That is timing your distributor. And if you have any questions, just send me an email. It's Nissan Rallycross Truck at gmail.com. This is a 1993 four-wheel drive KA24E, but the principle will apply to the two-wheel drive as well, up to 96, because I do believe they changed this in 1996 to comply with the new OBD2 standards. So sensors are different, and I know the distributor is different, but since I don't have one here, I can't give you a demonstration of how to do that particular one. But up to 1995, this will be how you do it. So that's how it goes. And once again, I thank everybody for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Leave a comment, leave a thumbs up if you liked what I did here, and hopefully that gets your hard body back on the road even quicker. Thanks guys, and have a great day.